Hey guys, tonight we climb aboard a 19th century French frigate. The steamship Junon waits in the glowing heat of a Marseille morning, her decks creaking with crates, ropes, and the scattered energy of 100 men trying to make sense of chaos. The masts tower like wooden cathedrals above a sea of confusion. Below, the Mediterranean laps at the hull like it's whispering that you're not ready for this. And honestly, you probably won't survive this, at least not with your dignity intact. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive just as the ship's whistle slices through the August haze. Sailors are shouting, deckhands duck under swinging hammocks. Someone has already tripped over a coil of tarred rope. A crate marked raisins has exploded across the dock, and a boy is being chased for licking the syrup. You pause for a moment before stepping up the gangway, one foot in the past and one in a future soaked in salt water. The Junon is no polished vessel. She's a steam-powered cargo ship with sails slapped on like a backup plan. She's solid, sure, but she moves like a stubborn mule in a dance hall. Her hull is thick. Her soul, if ships have one, is tired. Originally built to haul barrels and coal, she now hosts young scholars, eccentric professors, and one man who keeps calling everyone peasants even though he's here on a scholarship. You find your cabin squeezed behind a mess of plumbing and paint buckets. It's barely the size of a closet. There's a hammock that swings with judgment, a single trunk, one porthole that's been painted shut by accident. Your roommate is from Bruges. He offers you lavender soap and warns you that he dreams in Dutch. You pretend this is fine. Up on deck, your new captain, Commander BR, surveys the scene like he's calculating exactly how much patience he'll need. He's sharp, quiet, and according to rumors, once argued with a Spanish admiral over dinner about whether dolphins can feel envy. Historians still argue whether BR actually proposed the Junon's educational voyage, or whether he simply took charge when the original organizer vanished into diplomatic paperwork. Either way, you trust him, mostly. The idea is simple. Sail around the world, learn stuff, return as a better Frenchman. The Société des Voyages d'Études, founded with the help of celebrities like Ferdinand de Lesseps and Dupuy de l'Homme, had high hopes for this trip. A full circumnavigation was planned, France to the Americas, then across the Pacific, through Asia, back through Suez. But, as with all things involving committees and ambition, it got complicated. The ship was supposed to leave a week ago. Instead, you and the other passengers have been haunting the port, waiting while contractors hammered bunks in place and painters slept on patriotic blue. Last night, one professor found a chicken sleeping in his luggage. Nobody knows how it got there. The chicken refuses to comment. As evening settles, there's a rush to load final supplies. Crates of dried meat, sacks of potatoes, barrels of vinegar, all bundled aboard with last-minute urgency. Musicians play a goodbye march on the dock. Friends wave. One man proposes to his sweetheart and then accidentally drops the ring between planks. You're handed a thin booklet titled Basic Maritime Etiquette, and then immediately handed a mop. Dinner is chaos and curry. The cook, who used to work at the Splendide Hotel, has opinions. He's already furious that the cumin is stored near the soap. Plates clatter. Someone spills wine on the ship's only map. Nobody panics. You sit beside a young man from Lyon who already has sea legs and a weak stomach. You hear him mutter a prayer to St. Elmo, then burp quietly. Around 11, the engines roar awake. The anchor groans. The Junon, this strange hybrid of steam and sail, begins to move. Slowly at first, then more confidently. The harbor recedes. Marseille, with its lanterns and cathedral towers, fades into the night. You can see the last wave from the crowd on shore, one hand raised high above the stone wall of Fort Saint-Jean. That's it. You're leaving. Above you, the stars settle into place like calm spectators. The moon throws a silver line across the water. Behind you, the wake shimmers. In front, only blackness. You realize how quiet it has become. No more shouting, no more crates. just the thrum of machinery and the slap of water against steel. You stand at the railing until your arms feel heavy. The sea is calm tonight, but it carries weight. Stories, wrecks, whispers. It knows more than you do, and it's not planning to share all its secrets. You slip below to your cabin. The Belgian is already asleep. His boots are lined perfectly. His book is open to a chapter titled Politeness and Catastrophes. You fold into your hammock. It swings like a judgmental grandfather. The ceiling creaks. Somewhere far off, someone plays a quiet tune on a flute. Or maybe it's just the wind in the wires. You close your eyes. You feel the hum of the ship. You smell coal smoke and lemon oil. You think of everyone you left behind. You wonder what they're doing right now. Then, you stop wondering. This is your world now. A box of wood, a floating dream, a stubborn little frigate called Junan. Tomorrow, the open sea.
You wake before dawn, not because of any alarm, but because your body knows something has changed. The creaking above your head has a rhythm now. The ship is no longer waiting. It is moving, slowly, heavily, like a tired beast pulled from sleep. You swing your legs out of the hammock and immediately regret it. The floor tilts slightly under your feet. You pause, hand on the wall, and try to remember which way is forward. Your roommate, the Belgian, snores softly and clutches a book about polite behavior and maritime disasters. You take this as a sign. Outside, the world is still sleeping. The sky through the porthole is the color of wet slate. A single gull calls out, its voice thin and uncertain. You can just barely see the last jagged rocks of the French coast fading into mist. Marseille is behind you now. The docks, the shouting merchants, the women waving handkerchiefs from balconies. They're all gone. Your past is now measured in nautical miles. Up on deck, the air is sharp and smells like coal smoke mixed with salt, the kind of smell that gets into your clothes and your thoughts. Sailors move quietly in the dim light, pulling ropes, checking lines. Their boots knock softly against the wooden planks. You pass the crewman whistling a song that might be a lullaby or a funeral march. He doesn't look at you. The sea is smoother than you expected, but not kind. Each gentle wave lifts the Junon just enough to remind you that you are no longer part of solid ground. You find a corner near the railing and lean against it, eyes still adjusting. One of the professors joins you, a small man with wire-rimmed glasses and a scarf wrapped twice around his neck. He nods but says nothing. Together you watch the horizon bleed from gray to pale gold. The sun rises slow, cautious, like it's unsure whether to show up today. As light spreads across the sea, the rest of the passengers begin to appear. Some wrapped in wool blankets, others already scribbling in leather journals. There's a quiet camaraderie here, born from shared discomfort. No one knows quite what to say, so you all pretend that staring into the water counts as conversation. Breakfast is served in the salon, a long room with narrow benches and tables bolted to the floor. The food is simple: hard bread, weak coffee, and something that might be cheese or might be soap. No one complains. You eat beside a student from Lyon who asks you if you've ever seen a whale. You tell him no. He says he hopes to see one before Buenos Aires. You smile and nod. You hope to see land again before you throw up. By mid-morning, the ship is officially underway. 9.5 knots, someone says. Fast enough to leave France behind, but slow enough to notice it. The sun climbs higher, warming the deck but not the wind. The sea remains calm. The clouds stretch thin across the sky like old linen. You begin to feel the strange rhythm of being between things. Not quite a traveler, not quite a sailor, just a passenger with a coat too thin and a journal still empty. At 11, the bell rings for Mass. It's Sunday and tradition must be honored. You follow the others to the quarterdeck, which has been transformed into a chapel. Flags are draped like curtains, and a small wooden crate serves as the altar. The priest, a gentle man with tired eyes, begins the service in soft French. His voice rises and falls with the swell of the sea. You are not particularly religious, but something about the ceremony calms you. Maybe it's the collective silence. Maybe it's the sunlight catching the salt crystals on the railing. Maybe it's the way the words sound when spoken over water. You listen. You don't understand every word, but you understand the meaning. Behind the altar, the horizon stretches endlessly. You wonder how many other ships are out there, how many other people are sitting in makeshift pews on floating sanctuaries. The thought is oddly comforting. You're not the only one who left something behind. After the service, you stay a while longer, watching the water. The engine hums beneath your feet. It's steady, like a heartbeat you're starting to trust. A crewman offers you a piece of candied orange peel from a tin. You accept. It tastes like sunlight and memory. You thank him. He shrugs and says the best fruit is always smuggled. Lunch is better than breakfast, which surprises everyone. Stewed beans, dried sausage, and fresh figs bought last minute in Marseille. You eat slowly, savoring each bite like it might be the last decent food for days. The cook storms through the gallery waving a wooden spoon like a saber and shouting about sabotage. No one knows what he means. No one asks. The afternoon is yours. Some passengers read, others nap. You walk the length of the deck 3 times, counting the seagulls that follow the ship. 6, then 4, then none. You lean over the railing and listen to the water slap against the hull. It sounds like the ocean is whispering a secret just out of reach. As the sun begins to dip, the sky turns the color of ripe peaches. A breeze picks up. You pull your coat tighter and watch the first star blink into existence. Behind you, someone plays a tune on a harmonica. It's off-key but sweet, a lullaby for a ship and the souls it carries. Dinner is quiet. Candlelight flickers across tired faces. A professor reads aloud from a novel no one understands. You finish your meal and step back outside. The deck is slick with mist. The moon rises fat and gold above the waves. You exhale, slowly. This is real. You're doing it. You've left everything you knew for something you can't quite name. Back in your cabin, your roommate is already asleep. You climb into the hammock, still unsure whether it cradles you or mocks you. The ship creaks. The sea rocks. You close your eyes. Outside, the world moves slowly. Inside, you begin to dream.
You wake up to a sound you don't recognize. It's not the engine, not the creaking beams or the slap of waves. No, this is a human sound. A long, low groan from someone who has definitely made a mistake. Then another. And another. You open your eyes just in time to see your Belgian cabin mate lurch out of his hammock, clutching his stomach like he's been cursed. The sea is no longer gentle. The Junon is rolling. You climb up the ladder to the deck, hand over hand, because walking upright is no longer a reasonable expectation. As soon as you reach the top, the wind hits you. It's not violent, not stormy, but it's persistent. It tugs at your collar, your sleeves, your sense of direction. The sky is heavy with thick clouds, dull and low, as if the heavens are pressing down on the ship to see how she handles pressure. You make it to the railing just in time to see another passenger, a tall boy from Bordeaux, hurling the remnants of breakfast into the Mediterranean with impressive force. He doesn't care who sees. No one does. Seasickness is the great equalizer. Whether you're a diplomat's son or a baker's apprentice, the ocean doesn't care. It rolls you all the same. Your stomach twists, then settles, then twists again. You try breathing through your nose, focusing on the horizon, whispering affirmations under your breath. I am not weak. I am not sinking. I am not about to... You throw up. Not gracefully, not discreetly, but it's done. The sea nods. Welcome aboard. By mid-morning, the deck looks like the waiting room of an old hospital. Blank stares, pale faces, bodies slumped on benches and crates. A professor tries to give a lecture on ocean currents, but has to sit down halfway through because his ears are ringing and his knees have gone liquid. One of the crewmen offers ginger root. Another suggests tying a leather strap around your wrist and thinking happy thoughts. Neither works. The ship's doctor appears just long enough to diagnose everyone with vague symptoms like maritime discomfort, and then promptly disappears again, rumored to be sleeping off his own bout of nausea in the infirmary. The captain is unfazed. He walks the deck with steady boots and a mug of black coffee, eyes scanning the horizon like he's daring the weather to get worse. Historians still argue whether Commander Bayard ever got seasick. Some say he trained his body to resist it through sheer force of will. Others believe he simply avoided the galley. The wind continues to rise, not dangerously, but enough to turn the Junon into a slow-moving pendulum. Up, down, side to side, a rhythm with no melody. The sails flap, the ropes groan. Somewhere below, a plate smashes. You cling to the railing and wonder if this is what sailors meant when they spoke of the sea's moodiness. It's not rage, it's not love, it's indifference. By the time lunch rolls around, most passengers have given up entirely. The dining area is half empty. Those who do show up pick at dry bread and sniff their stew with suspicion. The cook is furious. He blames the weather, the water, and one poor sailor who dropped a ladle. He threatens to go on strike, but no one listens. Strikes only work on land. You take a bowl of broth and carry it carefully to a bench near the portside stairs. It's hard to eat when your insides are still debating whether they want to exist. You manage 4 spoonfuls before the motion gets the better of you. The rest of the bowl goes overboard with a splash. You whisper a small apology to whatever fish may have been watching. Afternoon brings a surprise, a break in the clouds. For the first time in hours, the sun pokes through, pale and shy. The wind softens, the sea calms, just slightly, enough for people to emerge from their cabins like cautious ghosts. The Parisian sketch artist is back on deck, pencil trembling in his hand. A pair of students play cards on an overturned crate. No one speaks loudly. The ocean is still deciding what mood it wants next. You take a slow walk from bow to stern. The ship is starting to smell like a real ship now. Salt, coal, oil, and human resilience. The ropes are slick and the masts sway, but the Junon holds together. She isn't elegant, but she's steady. You begin to appreciate her in a way that goes beyond her awkward construction. She's not trying to be anything she isn't. She's just doing her job, and doing it well. As the sun dips again toward the western horizon, the crew begins to reset the guilletes. The smaller sails are lowered and tied off. One sailor climbs the rigging like it's second nature, his boots gripping the rope as easily as walking a staircase. You watch him with quiet awe. He's not showy, he's not rushing, he's simply part of the ship now. Evening comes with a fragile peace. The worst of the motion seems to have passed. Dinner is a muted affair, but more people attend. The stew has too much salt, the bread is dry, but it's warm, and that's enough. You sit beside a man who claims to have served in the Navy and insists that the worst is behind you. You nod politely, but a part of you suspects he's lying for morale. Back in your cabin, the Belgian is upright again. He's reading aloud from a book of sea legends and laughing at the idea of ghost ships. You listen, half amused, half waiting for the next wave to remind you who's in charge. You brush your teeth with a tin cup of cold water and sit on the edge of your hammock, letting your legs swing like a child trying to forget a bad dream. Outside, the ship rocks more gently now. The stars are back. They blink above the mast, distant and unimpressed. You lie down and pull the thing blanket up to your chin. You think about the people on shore, tucked into beds that do not move. You wonder if they'll ever understand what this feels like. Your stomach still turns now and then, but your body is learning. You're adjusting. The sea hasn't beaten you. Not completely. Not yet. You wake to sunlight pouring through the tiny porthole, like someone tipped a bucket of gold onto your face. For a moment, you forget where you are. Then the floor shifts slightly beneath you, the hammock creaks, and it all comes rushing back. You're at sea, on the Yunnan, somewhere between Gibraltar and the horizon. You survived another night. Your stomach is calm. Your legs feel like your own. You smile to yourself. You've earned this small victory. Above deck, the mood is different. The air smells cleaner. The clouds are high and lazy. The wind is steady, but not mean. You step outside to find the ship gliding across a flat, glittering sea. It looks like someone ironed the ocean overnight. The sun bounces off the water in flickers that make your eyes squint and your thoughts feel lighter. The worst, it seems, has passed, for now. There's a new energy among the passengers. People are walking upright again. The quiet ghost faces of yesterday are now laughing, stretching, talking. One student is even singing a half-remembered folk song about goats. You don't ask. A professor sits in the shade of the aft sail, scribbling notes on coastal geography with a pipe clenched in his teeth. Even the cook looks slightly less murderous as he hauls up a crate of oranges and begins slicing them with theatrical flair. Today you begin to learn the routines. At sea, there are few rules more sacred than rhythm. Not just the tide or the engine's heartbeat, the rhythm of living. You quickly learn that washing must be done before breakfast if you want warm water. You learn that socks left unattended will mysteriously vanish, most likely blown overboard or secretly adopted by the ship's gremlin, a mythical figure the crew blames for anything missing. You also learn how to walk, not like a normal person, but like a sailor. Knees slightly bent, hips loose, eyes forward. You learn to time your steps with the swell and when to stop moving altogether if the ship dips unexpectedly. At first, you look ridiculous, but by noon, you've managed to cross the entire deck without grabbing a rope or cursing the ocean under your breath. Progress. The crew lets you watch as they re-rig the forward mast. It's not as glamorous as you expected. Ropes twist, pulleys creak, and everyone's hands are covered in tar. You help hold a coil of line and are rewarded with a nod from a grizzled sailor who smells like tobacco and thunderclouds. You feel absurdly proud. A week ago, you were reading newspapers in a Paris cafe. Now you're holding a rope on a steam frigate and wondering if you should grow a beard. You attend your first real lesson in the ship's makeshift classroom. It's little more than a corner of the salon cleared of tables, with the blackboard bolted to the wall, and chalk that tastes faintly of lemon from being stored near the preserves. Today's topic is navigation basics. The professor draws diagrams of compasses, charts, and angles. You nod along, pretending to understand. Someone asks, "What happens if you get lost at sea?" The professor says, with a perfectly straight face, that you die. The room goes quiet. You spend the afternoon learning knots. Real knots, not the kind you use for shoelaces. These have names like bowline, clove hitch, and monkey's fist. A sailor with enormous hands shows you how to tie each one, then makes you do it blindfolded. You fumble and curse and laugh. By the end of the hour, your fingers hurt and your pride is dented, but you can tie a knot that might actually save your life one day. Historians still argue whether this hands-on training was standard practice or the result of the Yunnan's unique hybrid mission, equal parts classroom and ship. In the galley, the cook is experimenting. Today's stew includes chickpeas, dried apricots, and something he refuses to identify. It tastes surprisingly good. You eat it sitting on a crate next to a window, watching the light ripple through the sails. The ship feels alive, not in a haunted way, but in a warm, steady, quietly breathing way, like an animal you're starting to trust. You wander into the cargo hold out of curiosity. It smells like oil, wet wood, and old secrets. Crates are stacked like miniature buildings, some marked with stenciled labels in 4 languages. Bananas from the Canaries, flour from Marseille,
One crate simply says, "Documents confidential, do not drop." You stand very still near that one. Later, you help the crew scrub the deck. It's part of daily maintenance. Everyone pitches in, even the fancier passengers. You roll up your sleeves, dip the brush into seawater, and start scrubbing. It's harder than it looks. By the end, your arms ache, your shirt is soaked, and your hands smell like salt and soap. But the wood gleams. The deck looks proud. You've contributed, and that feels good. The sky turns soft orange as the sun begins to set. You sit with your legs dangling off the side, just above the waterline. The wind ruffles your hair. The ocean hums. You hear laughter behind you, real belly-shaking laughter. Someone just lost a bet involving dried fish and poetry. You don't ask for details. It's enough to know that people are feeling human again. Dinner is a celebration. Someone found a tin of preserved pears, and it's being shared like treasure. Glasses clink. The violinist among the crew plays a lilting tune from Brittany. You don't know the words, but you hum along anyway. One of the professors stands up and gives a toast. To the sea, to survival, to figuring out how to use the head without falling in. Everyone laughs. It's the kind of moment that feels small and massive at the same time. Back in your cabin, you change into a clean shirt and lie down early. Your muscles are tired in a satisfying way. Your fingers are sore from knots and salt. You stare at the ceiling and trace the pattern of the wood grain with your eyes. You can hear your roommate softly whistling through his nose. You can hear the waves. You can feel the ship breathing beneath you. You're starting to belong here, not just as a passenger, as part of the rhythm. You know when the engine hiccups. You know when a wave is coming. You know that when the crew laughs a certain way, it probably means something is broken and you should hold on to something sturdy. The sea rocks you gently. The sails flutter above. Somewhere a lantern sways on its hook, casting dancing shadows across the hallway outside your door. You close your eyes, and sleep finds you easily.
By the time you climb up to the deck the next morning, the ship is already in sight of Gibraltar. At first, it's just a silhouette against the morning haze, a jagged triangle rising from the sea, too symmetrical to be natural, too massive to ignore. As the Junon draws closer, the shape becomes a stone beast, slouching at the gate of two continents, its spine bristling with cannon mouths and flags. The Rock, they call it. Gibraltar, a name that sounds like iron scraping across stone. The crew stirs with a little more alertness today. Shirts tucked in, boots polished. Even the cook has combed his beard. The reason becomes clear when a messenger approaches the captain. He reads the note, nods, and shouts something about permission. You're docking in a British military colony, and the British take that seriously. Historians still argue whether the strictness was purely about security or if it was just the British being, well, British. As the Junon glides into the Bay of Gibraltar, the water darkens to a deep blue. Around you, dozens of ships sit quietly at anchor. British warships, Spanish fishing boats, merchant vessels from half a dozen nations. Some fly colors you don't recognize. This place is a crossroads, not just of geography, but of empire, gossip, and war stories. Sailors from every continent watch you as your ship pulls in. Some wave, some just chew tobacco and nod. Stepping ashore, you're met with a mix of uniforms and languages. Red-coated British officers pace slowly past Moorish-looking arches. Spanish vendors shout the price of figs and lemons. Jewish shopkeepers stand in shaded doorways, nodding to passing sailors. Moroccan dock workers haul crates in loose white robes. It feels like a small world shoved into one city block. You turn your head and catch 3 distinct smells in 3 seconds: coal smoke, goat cheese, and perfume that might be illegal in France. The city itself is tightly wound, like a coiled spring. Streets twist uphill between stone buildings. There are watchtowers, barracks, and balconies draped with frying clothes. You pass a church that shares a wall with a mosque and hear someone playing a piano through an open window. A group of British schoolchildren in immaculate blue uniforms marches by, giggling in unison. Everything feels rigid and alive at the same time. Then you hear the story. It starts like this. Once, a man named Johnstone went for a walk outside the gates with his young daughter. They wandered a bit too far. The sun was low, time slipped away. When they returned, the gates were closing. Gibraltar's gates close at exactly 9 o'clock, and once they're shut, no one, and this is important, no one comes back in. The father rushed forward, pleading. His daughter was just a few steps behind, but the guards wouldn't budge. Orders were orders. He begged. They refused. He called for the officer. The officer said, "Bring me a signed order from the governor." The governor, of course, was asleep. The girl spent the night outside the gates, alone in the dark. The father spent it inside, pacing, furious, helpless. At dawn, the gates opened, and they were reunited. No harm done, officially, but the message was clear. Gibraltar is not a place for bending rules. You feel a chill as the story ends. You glance at the thick stone walls rising behind you. You believe it. Despite its severity, Gibraltar has a strange beauty. The view from the upper slopes is staggering. Below you, the sea spreads out like glass. On one side, Spain stretches westward in olive greens and dusty browns. On the other, Africa rises in a smoky blur. You can see the curve of two continents meeting at a single point, and it makes you feel very small and very lucky to be here. A guide leads your group into the famous tunnels, military galleries blasted right through the rock. They're dark, damp, and echo with your footsteps. You pass cannon embrasures pointing out at sea, their iron mouths rusted but still menacing. The air smells of gunpowder, limestone, and old sweat. You duck your head to pass through a narrow arch and find yourself staring at a centuries-old inscription, a date, a name, carved by hand. You trace the letters with your fingers and wonder if that soldier ever made it home. Outside again, the sun feels too bright. You blink against it as you walk down into the lower town. A market is in full swing. Brightly colored fabrics hang from lines between windows. You buy a small pouch of almonds roasted with honey and eat them slowly as you watch a parrot squawk at a passing dog. A sailor nearby tries to trade a pair of boots for a compass. The vendor shrugs. Maybe tomorrow. Lunch is taken in a little garden tucked behind a row of whitewashed buildings. Orange trees cast dappled shade across a stone table. A British officer sits nearby sipping tea and pretending not to eavesdrop on your conversation. The captain tells a story about a storm near Madagascar. A professor talks about the geological layers of the rock. Someone else brings up the theory that the Strait of Gibraltar was once a narrow land bridge. Historians still debate whether the ancient world saw the Atlantic as a true ocean or just a mysterious lake beyond the edge of maps. You return to the Junon in the late afternoon. The crew is busy loading supplies, barrels of coal, sacks of fresh fruit, a few mysterious boxes stamped with British crests. You lean against the railing and watch the city slowly sink into golden light. The stone glows, the ships sway. Bells ring from 3 different directions, and each one feels like it belongs to a different century. As night falls, you sit on the deck with a cup of hot water flavored with mint leaves. Someone lights a lantern. Someone else tells a story about pirates who used to hide in the coves nearby. You wonder how many ships passed through this strait before yours. How many never made it out? Below deck, the hum of preparation begins again. You feel the slight tug of the engine winding up, like the heartbeat of something ancient and alive. The Junon is getting ready to leave. You climb into your hammock, but your mind stays on land a little longer. You see the sharp edge of the rock, the shimmer of the sea, the gates that don't open after dark, and the girl alone outside watching the stars and waiting for morning.
The sea is velvet this morning. Not the choppy, frothy kind you tasted on the way to Gibraltar, but the long, slow waves that stretch like silk under the sky. You barely feel the motion as the Junon glides southwest. The air is warmer now. The wind has changed, carrying with it a whisper of sweetness. There's something different in the light, too. Softer. Hazy, like dreams are hanging just above the horizon. Someone shouts from the mast to land ahead. Not just any land. Madeira. You hurry to the railing and squint. At first, it's a smudge. Then the smudge becomes a shape, and the shape becomes a rising green spine in the middle of the Atlantic. Peaks and folds like a crumpled emerald blanket thrown across the sea. Funchal comes into view, spilling down the mountainside toward the harbor. White houses with red tile roofs stacked like puzzle pieces. You've never seen a city so ready to slide into the water. As the Junon slows, small boats pull alongside. Barefoot boys call up to you, offering bananas, grapes, papayas, all of them sunburned and grinning. They dive into the water like it's nothing, chasing after coins tossed from the railings. Their arms slice the sea like oars. You toss a franc and watch one of them disappear, then pop up with it between his teeth like a magician. Stepping onto the stone quay, you feel it immediately. The warmth, the scent. Madeira smells like fruit trees, old wine, sea salt, and something floral you can't quite name. Maybe jasmine, maybe something rarer. The air tastes alive. You pass through a shaded avenue of fig trees and hibiscus blossoms, and already your shirt clings to your back. You don't mind. The city hums quietly. It's not loud like Marseille or tense like Gibraltar. Funchal feels like a place that has nothing to prove. Horse-drawn sleds roll down steep cobbled streets, gliding on wooden runners as if the city decided roads were optional. The sound is soft and rhythmic, a hiss of wood on stone, followed by bursts of laughter. You ask if it's safe. A man nods and says it's safer than trusting the donkeys. A group of you climb into one of these sledges, driven by two men in straw hats who steer with ropes and thick-soled shoes. You lurch forward, slowly at first, then faster, then even faster. Your stomach lifts as you whip around a corner, dodging fruit stands and stray chickens. The air rushes past your ears. You shout, partly for joy, partly for the reasonable fear of crashing into a bakery. But you don't. You arrive at the bottom, cheeks flushed and heart racing, and immediately want to do it again. After lunch, fresh fish, grilled with lemon and a bottle of Madeira wine so sweet it makes your teeth ache, you join an excursion up into the hills. The goal is the Gran Corral, a deep volcanic basin ringed by peaks and wrapped in mist. The hike is long, hot. You sweat through your collar before you're even out of town. The path climbs past banana groves, terraces of sugarcane, and old women selling passion fruit from baskets. They smile with missing teeth and tell you to watch for goats. As you gain altitude, the temperature drops. The trees become denser. Tall pines and laurel forests whisper around you. One professor says this is a rare type of subtropical biome found in only a few places on Earth. Another says he read the same thing in a travel brochure. You decide not to fact-check either of them. Eventually, you reach a clearing overlooking the basin. It's like staring into a green bowl filled with clouds. Waterfalls trickle down mossy cliffs. Birds flip between branches. Everything is quiet. You sit on a flat rock and breathe in deep. There's no city hum here. No engines, just the wind and the birds and the hush of something ancient. For a long moment, nobody speaks. You descend at sunset. The light bleeds gold through the trees. Back in town, torches have been lit. The streets glow softly. There's music drifting from a square, a violin, a tambourine, maybe even a small drum. You follow the sound and find a crowd gathered around dancers in bright skirts and loose shirts, spinning in time to an unfamiliar melody. The locals clap in rhythm. You clap too, unsure but happy. A boy hands you a cup of something. It smells like honey and fire. You sip. It burns in the best way. Someone passes around figs soaked in rum. Someone else sings a love song in Portuguese that makes your chest ache, even though you don't understand the words. Later, back on the Junon, the captain hosts a small toast, a thank you to the governor of Madeira, who visited earlier and thanked the ship for transporting him to nearby Porto Santo. You remember the quick side voyage. The governor had wanted to check on the island's condition, especially since a poor harvest had put it at risk of famine. Historians still debate whether that trip was political or genuinely humanitarian. Either way, it gave you a rare glimpse of a place untouched by tourism, quiet and solemn under the same Atlantic sun. As the night deepens, you sit on deck with a wedge of honeyed cake and a glass of port. The ship creaks gently. The crew laughs somewhere forward. A soft wind blows from the west, carrying with it the scent of wood smoke and orange blossom. You think about what Madeira gave you, not just sights or tastes, but a feeling that life doesn't always need to rush, that sweetness can be slow, that gravity can be a playground if you have the right kind of sled. Below deck, the hammocks sway gently. The lamps are low. Someone snores in French. Someone whispers in Flemish. The ship rests, waiting. You lie back, eyes closed, letting the wine warm your chest. Madeira fades behind you, but not completely. Part of it stays in your tongue, your breath, your memory. You sleep like the island itself, lush, slow, and filled with dreams.
Morning begins with the dull clang of the engine reversing and the low rumble of anchor chains pulling up from the depths. Madeira is fading into the haze behind you, its green shoulders slowly sinking beneath the sea's edge. You lean over the railing, trying to catch one last scent of orange blossom or burnt sugar, but the breeze has already shifted. It now carries something saltier, hotter, more barren. You are heading for Cape Verde, and the tropics are beginning to whisper. The crew is quieter today. The sea has stretched out like a great unrolled scroll, blue and endless. There's no visible land for hours, just sky and water blending at the edges in a way that makes your eyes lose focus. The sun is harsher now, directly overhead. You try to write in your journal, but the sweat from your wrist soaks the pages. This stretch of ocean feels wider, lonelier. Gone are the coastlines, the landmarks, the cities perched on hills. Now it's you, the ship, and the idea of Africa, somewhere ahead. One of the professors mentions that this part of the Atlantic was once feared for being windless, a place that could trap ships in deadly stillness. The doldrums, he calls it. You hope the Junon's steam engine makes that fear obsolete, but just to be safe, you whisper a small prayer to whatever god manages the wind. 2 days pass like this. The air thickens. You drink more water, and even the sailors wear less clothing. Shirts are open, bare feet slap against hot deck planks. Someone passes out from heat stroke, but he's revived with rum and a cold towel. You spend the afternoons in the shade of the lifeboats, watching flying fish burst from the sea like silver darts and arc through the air before vanishing with a splash. On the morning of the third day, land is spotted. You squint and see low hills, scorched brown, rising from the sea, Cape Verde. But this isn't the lush green of Madeira. These are volcanic islands, dry and sun-bleached, dusty ridges, pale grass,
houses the color of sand and bone. As the ship nears the harbor at Praia, the capital of Santiago Island, you notice how everything feels slower. The port is small, the docks uneven. Donkeys shuffle along the water's edge, hauling bundles wrapped in palm leaves. The men wear loose shirts and wide straw hats. Women balance baskets of mangoes on their heads and sway through the marketplace like dancers in slow motion. Cape Verde, you learn, has long been a station for ships like yours, a place to resupply, to breathe, to prepare, but it also carries heavier histories. Once, these islands were a hub in the Atlantic slave trade. You walk past stone buildings with iron-barred windows and realize some were once holding cells. The air is hot, yes, but it carries weight too. You feel it in your chest. A guide takes you up a hill to a plateau overlooking the town. From here, the ocean spreads wide and blue, studded with islets. A crumbling fortress stands nearby, its cannons pointed forever outward at an enemy long gone. You sit in the shade of an acacia tree and listen to the cicadas, and for a moment you imagine what it must have felt like to be held here, waiting, watching the horizon for a ship that would change everything. Down in town, music drifts through the alleys, strings and drums, voices raised in something halfway between mourning and celebration. The local children chase each other through the dust, kicking a deflated ball made from twine and rags. You smile and hand over a few sweets you saved from breakfast. One girl, maybe 6 years old, gives you a mango in return. It's warm and sticky, and perfect. Lunch is taken in a shaded courtyard. Grilled fish, rice with beans, and a red sauce that makes your lips tingle. A man sits nearby playing a 4-stringed instrument. He says it's called a cavaquinho, smaller than a guitar, older than your ancestors. He sings in Creole, a language born of sailors, slaves, merchants, and mothers. You can't understand it, but your heart does. In the afternoon, you visit a village inland. It takes hours by mule cart. The road is little more than a suggestion. Dust coats your shoes, your teeth, your soul. But the view is worth it. Palm groves shimmer in the heat. Women thresh corn with rhythmic thuds. Children run beside you shouting greetings in French, Portuguese, and languages you don't recognize. You're taken to a small schoolhouse, a single room with wooden benches and slates. A teacher explains through a translator how important education is here, how books arrive months late, how sometimes there's no chalk, but the students still come. You leave behind your extra pencils, a few notepads, and one dog-eared novel. It feels like planting seeds in dry ground. Back on the Junon, the hold is being filled with supplies. Bananas, sacks of cassava, barrels of water. A chicken escapes and leads 2 sailors on a mad chase across the deck. You laugh harder than you have in days. The captain lets out a sigh of victory when the bird is finally caught and placed gently in a crate. Someone names it Madeira. Evening falls fast near the equator. The sky turns from gold to violet in minutes. You gather with the others near the bow to watch the sun disappear behind the hills. The light flickers off the water. For a moment, you see your own reflection in the sea. Sunburned, dusted with red earth, smiling in a way you haven't since childhood. As the ship pulls away from the dock, the people on shore wave slowly, like they know you won't forget them. Drums play in the distance. Someone throws a flower into the water. You watch it bob in the wake until it vanishes. You return to your hammock feeling full and quiet. Cape Verde didn't charm you like Madeira. It didn't dazzle, but it carved something deeper. A feeling of having brushed against history, against pain, against hope that still dances barefoot in the dust. Sleep comes heavy. The heat presses against your skin. The ship creaks. And just before your mind drifts away completely, you hear the sound of a cavaquinho, played softly by a sailor who isn't quite ready to let the music go.
The next stretch of sea feels wider than any before. You wake with a sense of distance, not just from land, but from anything fixed. Days pass without sight of a coastline. The Junon plunges steadily westward, chasing the equator under skies so blue they border on impossible. The horizon curves slightly, reminding you that the earth is round and you're truly floating on it. The heat now is intense, unforgiving, thick as syrup. You sweat through your linen before breakfast. Your journal pages curl at the edges. Sailors rig extra canvas to create shade, and even the captain has loosened his collar. The air down below is worse, hot, still, and scented with oil, wood, and boiled potatoes. You take to sleeping on deck when you can, using your hat as a pillow and your shoes as anchors. Then, on the 5th morning, someone yells. Not panic, excitement. You scramble to the railing and see it. A silver-gray shape leaping through the waves, not far from the bow. Dolphins. A whole pod of them, at least a dozen, maybe more, weaving in and out of the water like arrows of joy. They race the ship, leap in synchrony, vanish, reappear. You laugh out loud. Everyone does. It's impossible not to. For a moment, you're all children again, watching magic. Later that same day, another form appears on the horizon. Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. A name that seems too big for any one place to contain. The Junon approaches slowly, rounding the curve of Guanabara Bay. And then it hits you, the sight of Sugarloaf Mountain rising like a monolith, with the city unfurling beneath it like a painting come to life. Rio in the 1870s is a contradiction. At once beautiful and chaotic, fragrant and foul, ancient and new. As you dock, you notice the colors first, bright whites and deep blues, the red of tile roofs, the orange of papayas piled high on carts. Then the sounds, laughter, hooves, church bells, and 1,000 voices in Portuguese, French, and African dialects. Stepping ashore, your senses are assaulted. The air is thick with the perfume of flowers and human sweat. Vendors shout over one another, offering grilled meats, sweet pastries, and chilled coconut water served straight from the shell. Women in brilliant scarves carry baskets on their heads. Men in linen suits fan themselves furiously. Barefoot children dart through alleys, their laughter cutting through the heat like cool wind. A guide escorts you toward the city center. You pass colonial churches with gilded altars and tiled facades, then modern government buildings that look like they were dropped from a Paris blueprint and left to melt in the sun. Historians still debate whether Brazil's architectural style was born from pride, imitation, or simply an overambitious import of European taste. You visit the imperial palace, where a painting of Emperor Dom Pedro II watches you with quiet skepticism. A tall, bearded man with a serious gaze and a love for progress, he's credited with pushing Brazil towards modernization, even as slavery persisted all around him. Brazil won't abolish slavery for another decade. You walk past chained laborers unloading cargo, and it turns your stomach. The contradictions of empire weigh heavy here. To escape the heat, your group takes a cable car, or rather a mule-drawn cart, up into the hills of Santa Teresa. The air cools, and the city below reveals its sprawl. Red-tiled roofs tumble toward the bay. The forest stretches behind, green and impenetrable. Birds call out in strange songs. A botanist points out a monkey darting through the branches. You blink and almost miss it. That evening, you attend a local music hall. The walls are wooden, the air thick with smoke and perfume. A quartet plays a tune you've never heard before, syncopated, swinging, full of longing and joy. Someone whispers the word choro, a Brazilian style born of European polkas and African rhythm, played with flutes and guitars. The music wraps around your chest like warm cloth. A young woman sings. Her voice is low, velvety, almost sorrowful. You don't understand the words, but you understand the feeling. Missing something you've never had, dancing anyway. You sip a drink that tastes like lime and fire. The night sways. The next day, you take a small boat into the bay. A fisherman offers to show you a nearby island. You climb aboard. The boat smells like salt and old rope. The fisherman rows with steady arms. He tells you stories about sea spirits, storms, and a giant fish that once swallowed a whole canoe and spat out the paddle. The island is small, just rocks and trees and birds, but it feels like another world. You sit on a flat stone and watch Rio shimmer in the distance. A butterfly lands on your arm. You don't move. Returning to the ship, you feel changed. Rio hasn't just impressed you, it's unsettled you. The beauty here is not peaceful, it's wild, electric, dangerous, like touching a flame and not wanting to let go. Back on the Junon, the crew prepares to depart. The hold now carries bags of coffee, bundles of tobacco, and crates of tropical wood. A monkey, gifted by a local official, now resides in a cage near the galley, eyeing everyone with suspicion and occasional screeches. You're not sure who he likes least, the captain or the cook. As the ship pulls away, the mountains of Rio fade into mist. You stand on deck, hand resting on the warm wood of the railing. The city disappears behind you, but the rhythms stay in your blood. The heat lingers in your bones. You think about the music, the joy braided with sorrow, the empire with its shadows, the dolphins leaping through blue waves, and how, even in the darkest contradiction, light finds a way to shine. You fall asleep that night with the scent of mango still on your fingertips and the pulse of churro echoing softly in your chest.
The Atlantic has changed again. You wake to find the sea rougher, the sky darker, the wind sharp enough to sting. Rio's warmth has vanished behind you like a dream. Now the Junon charges south, skimming the edge of the world. You pull your coat tighter and grip the railing as the ship tilts into another heavy swell. Ahead lies the Rio de la Plata, the broad estuary where South America's veins split, one to Uruguay, the other to Argentina. The journey into Montevideo is choppy. The estuary, nearly as wide as the sea, churns with brown, muddy water. The sky is the color of pewter. But as the ship draws closer, Montevideo rises from the mist like a tired soldier. Low hills, forts, church towers. It's not as flamboyant as Rio, but there's a steadiness here, a quiet confidence in its red roofs and whitewashed walls. Montevideo is a city of horses. You notice it immediately. Carriages clip-clop down cobbled streets, riders in wide-brimmed hats gallop across open fields, and even the children play games of lasso in the dusty squares. It's also a city of recent scars. The Uruguayan civil wars still echo in conversations and ruined buildings and statues of generals who stare down boulevards like ghosts in marble uniforms. A soldier guides you through the old city. He points out bullet holes in a stone facade, remnants of a siege. Historians still argue whether Uruguay's constant swings between liberal and conservative factions were driven by real ideology or simply by hungry generals. Either way, Montevideo has paid in blood. Still, the people smile. At a tavern, you're handed a cup of mate, a bitter herbal drink shared from a gourd with a silver straw. You try it. Your face contorts. The locals laugh. It grows on you, someone says. You're not convinced, but by the fourth sip, something clicks. It's earthy, strong, unapologetic, like Uruguay itself. That afternoon, you're invited to an estancia outside the city, a long ride across flat grassland. The air smells of dust and leather. Gauchos, South American cowboys, ride beside your cart, their horses trotting like poetry in motion. They wear bombachas, wide-legged trousers tucked into boots, with knives at their belts and ponchos across their shoulders. One of them sings as he rides, a melancholy tune that bends with the wind. At the estancia, you're shown how to lasso, how to brand, how to ride bareback. You fail at all three. But the laughter is generous, and the food afterward makes up for your bruised pride. Grilled beef, chorizo, flatbread cooked over coals. Chimichurri so spicy it brings tears. As evening falls, the sky turns lavender. You sit by the fire as the gauchos tell stories of pumas in the hills, of duels over stolen horses, of ghosts seen by moonlight. One man insists he once spoke to the spirit of Artigas, Uruguay's national hero, who told him to stop gambling and marry his cousin. You're not sure which part is more disturbing. The ride back to Montevideo is quiet. The stars are clearer here, brighter. You count 7 shooting stars before falling asleep in the jolting cart. The road blurs, the night hums. 2 days later, you sail across the river to Buenos Aires. The city looms larger, brasher, and more European. Broad boulevards, theaters, elegant cafes. You hear French, Italian, Spanish, sometimes all in one sentence. Buenos Aires smells of pastries, coal smoke, and perfume. It is a city in love with itself, and frankly, it's hard not to love it back. A local journalist offers to show you around. You visit the Teatro Colón, still under construction but already magnificent. You stroll through San Telmo, its cobbled streets echoing with the shuffle of tango music and the clink of glasses. You're warned to mind your wallet, and rightly so. 2 pickpockets make an attempt before lunch. You try choripan, a sausage sandwich so simple, so greasy, and so perfect that you wonder why you ever ate anything else. You drink Malbec. You listen to poetry in a smoky parlor where someone quotes Sarmiento and someone else insults Rosas, and a fistfight almost breaks out before a guitarist soothes the room with a folk ballad. Argentina, you realize, is a country still inventing itself, still choosing who to remember and who to forget. One professor on board calls it a young republic with the temper of an old widow. You're not entirely sure what that means, but it feels accurate. One afternoon, you attend a polo match, an elite sport imported from Britain and now embraced by Argentine aristocracy. The horses are sleek, the riders fierce. A man in a white suit explains the rules with the air of someone who has never once fallen off a horse. You sip lemonade and squint at the sun. You cheer when everyone else cheers. Later, at a market near La Boca, you buy a carved wooden figurine of a man playing the bandoneon. The vendor wraps it in newspaper and tells you in Spanish he plays forever, even after the music stops. You tuck it in your satchel and wonder if he meant Buenos Aires or something else. The day before the Junon departs, a storm rolls in. Thunder cracks across the wide sky. Rain lashes the windows of your hotel. Streets flood quickly, turning into rivers of filth and leaves. You watch from under an awning as men roll barrels through knee-deep water and children splash like it's all a game. You think about the river itself, the Rio de la Plata, wide enough to swallow cities, muddier than you imagined. Historians still debate whether it should be called a river at all, or an estuary, or a drowned plain. It doesn't matter. It flows, it shifts, and it carries stories to the sea. When the Junon sets sail again, the water is calmer. The storm has passed. Buenos Aires shrinks behind you, its domes and towers fading like a memory too rich to last. You stand at the rail, holding your bandoneon figurine. You can still hear music, distant, soft, but certain. You know now what South America feels like. It isn't just a place on a map. It's horses thundering across plains. It's powdered sugar on your fingers. It's a song in a language you don't speak, but somehow still understand. The wind picks up. The ship turns south again.
You're heading into the great unknown now.
or at least what it once was to the cartographers and captains of centuries past. The Juman aims her bow toward the frozen edge of the world, following the curve of South America's tail into the dreaded Strait of Magellan. The wind sharpens, the temperature drops. You pull out your heaviest coat and still feel the chill digging into your bones. This is no longer the lush, fragrant tropics. This is Patagonia, where the earth meets sky in a howling match. You spend most of your time on deck, watching the coastline change from rolling grasslands to jagged cliffs. Mountains loom in the distance, their peaks powdered with snow even in summer. The air smells cleaner now, saltier, with the occasional hint of pine. The sea turns darker, more serious slate gray instead of blue. As the ship pushes southward, you hear the name Magellan on everyone's lips. The strait was first navigated by the Portuguese explorer in 1520. Historians still argue whether Magellan truly understood what he had found or simply lucked into it while trying to avoid mutiny. Either way, this narrow passage between two oceans remains a sailor's test of nerve. The Junan, with her iron belly and French flag, feels small among these wild waters. You reach the entrance to the strait late in the day. The light stretches long across the surface, making the water shimmer like oil. A lighthouse blinks from a rocky point. Seabirds scream. The crew stands tense, ropes in hand, eyes scanning the horizon. Even the cook is quiet. Everyone knows this part of the voyage carries risk. The channel narrows quickly. Forested hills close in on either side. Gusts of wind slam into the ship from odd angles. You hold the rail tightly and lean into the spray. Ahead, islands dot the path like scattered teeth, some inhabited, some utterly wild. The captain consults charts older than most nations and adjusts course by fractions. That night, the sky turns black and the stars blaze like fire. You stand, with a blanket draped over your shoulders, shivering but unwilling to go below. The silence is immense. Even the engine quiets, like it too is in awe of where you are. You hear whales exhale somewhere nearby, long and slow as if dreaming. The next day brings more challenges. A sudden squall roars through the channel, tossing the Junan like a toy. Rain lashes sideways. Waves slam the hull. You clutch a beam and try not to think about shipwrecks. One sailor is thrown across the deck, breaking his arm. He laughs, later, while it's being splintered. "Just a kiss from Patagonia," he says. But then, as quickly as it came, the storm passes. The sun breaks through. You round a bend in the channel and find yourself facing a glacial valley so beautiful it seems painted. Waterfalls ribbon down green cliffs, an archbow a rainbow above a snow-capped ridge. For a moment, no one speaks. You anchor in a cove to rest. A small launch takes you ashore. You step onto wet pebbles and breathe in air so fresh it burns your throat. The beach is lined with driftwood and strange shells. Trees twist in the wind like dancers. A naturalist on board identifies them as sub-Antarctic beaches, resilient, wind-sculpted survivors. You run your hand over one and think about how old it must be and how many ships it's seen pass by. You follow a narrow path into the woods. Moss carpets the ground. Birds cry overhead. Somewhere, you think you hear the rustle of something larger. Maybe a guanaco, the native llama-like animal, or maybe just your imagination. Either way, the land feels alive, watching. Back on the ship, the crew shares stories of other passages through the strait. One sailor swears he saw ghost lights dancing on the cliffs during his last crossing. Another tells of a ship that disappeared in a fog bank and re-emerged 2 weeks later with no crew aboard. You try to laugh, But part of you wonders, these are old waters. They remember things. As the Junon pushes further west through the strait, the scenery shifts again. The cliffs grow taller. The sky narrows above you like a tunnel. Ice appears in the water, small at first, then larger. Bergs drift silently past, white and blue and jagged. One turns slowly, revealing a cave in its side. The sailors give it wide berth. You stare, mesmerized, as it slides away into the mist. You finally emerge into the Pacific. The opening is subtle. No trumpet blast, no sudden sunshine, just a sense of relief. The ocean stretches out again, vast and deep. The captain toasts with the crew. You sip hot tea and wrap yourself tighter. The southernmost part of your journey is behind you now. Your body feels it, the fatigue of days without rest, the tension of cold and fear. But your mind races. You've seen a part of the earth few ever do. You've watched the sun set behind ancient cliffs and heard the wind scream through forests untouched by cities. You've walked where only moss and wind have walked before. You sleep hard that night. The ship rocks gently in open sea again. Your dreams are filled with ice, waterfalls, and the sound of whales breathing in the dark. When you wake, the Junon is already pushing northward, tracing the Chilean coast. The captain promises calmer seas and warmer weather soon, but part of you already misses the wild, the hard, the beautiful loneliness of the Strait of Magellan. And even as the sun rises warmer than before, you still feel the cool kiss of Patagonia clinging to your cheeks, like a reminder that you were once somewhere the world still feels untamed. You're halfway up the jagged spine of Chile now, the Junon moving smoothly along calmer waters. The shift from Patagonia's wild teeth to Chile's gentle embrace feels like moving from a stormy dream to the edge of civilization. The wind is softer here, the sun rises earlier, and the scent in the air changes. Less salt, more dust, more smoke, more people. Valparaiso appears on the horizon like a trick of perspective, a city stacked on itself. Hills rise steeply from the shore, each slope covered in a mosaic of colorful houses, some tilted like they're holding their breath. You think of spilled marbles, a child's drawing, or a map that got wet and dried in funny shapes. There's no city in Europe quite like it, and yet Valparaiso calls itself La Perla del Pacífico, the Pearl of the Pacific. As you disembark, the city greets you with a mix of elegance and exhaustion. The streets near the port are loud, teeming with sailors, dogs, and wheelbarrows filled with coal. The air smells like dried fish, tobacco, and warm pastries. Children run barefoot between carts. Stray cats glare at you from windowsills. Laundry flutters like flags of small victories from every balcony. To reach the higher parts of the city, you take one of the famous ascensores, wooden funiculars built into the hills. It rattles and creaks, and you clutch the rail as it jerks upward at a terrifying angle. But when you reach the top, it's worth it. The whole harbor sprawls beneath you, a necklace of ships and sails catching the morning light. The Andes loom faintly behind the haze, white peaks like distant gods watching the coast. You're taken to a modest inn where you'll stay while the Junon loads supplies and allows for land excursions. Your room is simple, a cot, a basin, and a desk with a loose drawer that holds someone's forgotten poetry. The paper smells like lemon oil and ink. You don't read the name, but you fold the paper gently and put it back. That evening, your guide, a Chilean professor in a long coat and smudged spectacles, invites you to a cafe in the heart of the old quarter. It's dimly lit, full of tobacco smoke and murmured conversations. You sip strong coffee while he talks about Chile's politics, its mining boom, its recent war with Spain. Historians still debate whether Chile's early success in industrializing came from natural advantage or sheer stubbornness. Your guide says it was both, and then he raises his cup like a toast to every stubborn miner in the Atacama. The next morning, you board a train to Santiago, the capital. The ride is long but gorgeous. Hills rolling past like painted backdrops, cacti lining the tracks, shepherds waving lazily as you clatter by. You feel as though you're traveling through a painting, one done in earth tones with sky-colored shadows. Santiago is a city of balance. On one end, plazas lined with colonial architecture. On the other, modern boulevards echoing Parisian dreams. There are statues everywhere, generals, poets, presidents, and most of them seem to be pointing at something important. You follow the line of one statue's bronze finger and end up at a fruit market. There you taste your first cherry moya, a green, heart-shaped fruit that smells like vanilla and tastes like dreams. A vendor shows you how to cut it open. Inside, the flesh is creamy, dotted with seeds you don't dare eat. You scoop it with a spoon, standing barefoot on warm stone, and for a moment, nothing else matters. You visit La Moneda Palace, the seat of government. Guards in pristine white uniforms stand motionless at the gates. You remember reading that this very palace would someday be bombed during a coup, but in your time, it's a symbol of Chilean pride. Inside, you see oil paintings of early leaders with heavy brows and even heavier waistcoats. A guide says one president once ruled for less than a week. You ask if he's still got a portrait. The guide grins. Of course, it's tradition. In the afternoon, your group tours a silver workshop. Chile's mines fuel half its economy, and the metal glints everywhere in rings and mirrors in the eyes of old shopkeepers who know its weight. You try on a bracelet hammered into the shape of a condor's wing. The artisan offers it to you for free. You insist on paying. He insists harder. You both settle on a handshake, and he slips the bracelet into your pocket when you're not looking. That evening, back in Valparaiso, you sit at a rooftop tavern with other passengers. The sun drops slowly into the Pacific, painting the sky with citrus and fire. Someone plays a guitar. A woman sings softly in Spanish, and even though you miss every word, you understand every feeling. You're told about Pablo Neruda, a local poet who will someday win the Nobel Prize. Right now, he's still a boy, scribbling verse somewhere in the city's maze. You think of the forgotten poem in your drawer and wonder if it might have been his. Probably not, but maybe. The next day, the Junon is ready to sail again. Supplies are stacked high on the docks. Barrels of dried fruit, sacks of flour, crates of copper ore. A few new passengers board. A German botanist with a suitcase full of dried leaves, a Chilean priest bound for Lima, and a mute boy with brilliant eyes and a bird cage that holds no bird. You step aboard and feel the slight roll of the ship under your boots. The air is warmer now, the sea a gentler shade of green. As the harbor slips away behind you, the hills of Valparaiso blink with laundry and sunlight, like the city is waving goodbye with both hands. You stand by the stern as the coast stretches thin, until even the mountains fade into sky. The bracelet on your wrist catches the last light of Chile, glinting once before night falls. The Pacific is calling. You're not done yet.
The Pacific Ocean unfurls before you now, wide and steady. The Junon glides across its surface like it's been set free from the jaws of the South. After the cold, the cliffs, and the brooding skies of Patagonia, this part of the journey feels like a warm exhale. You rise early each morning to watch the waves change color with the sun, shifting from slate gray to emerald green to sapphire blue. The crew is less tense now. Even the officers walk with looser shoulders. You can feel it too, that unspoken permission to let your guard down. Your next stop is Peru. Cayoyo, the country's main port, appears first as a faint gray smear on the horizon.
But soon the harbor bristles with movement. Small fishing boats bob beside cargo steamers, flags flap in every direction. The port is a living organism, loud, urgent, endlessly busy. The air is thick with the scent of salt, smoke, and something metallic. It smells like a place that builds things. You step off the Junon and nearly collide with a donkey carrying sacks of maize. Someone shouts in Spanish. A child offers to polish your boots for a coin. The world feels new again. You join a group traveling inland to Lima, the capital, just a few miles from the coast, but a world apart. The carriage ride there passes through dusty roads lined with adobe homes and open fields. You see workers bent low over sugarcane. Goats nibble shrubs near dry riverbeds. Birds circle overhead, casting flickering shadows on the ground. The city itself rises slowly into view, a cluster of domes, spires, and plazas laid out like a faded quilt. Palm trees sway gently above cobbled streets. Lima has the faded grandeur of a city that was once the heart of a continent. Spanish colonial buildings with cracked white stucco and elaborate ironwork balconies line the avenues. Some facades are freshly painted, others worn like antique lace. You stay in an old monastery converted into a guest house. The walls are thick, the windows are high and arched, your bed is narrow but soft. In the courtyard, orange trees bloom, their perfume floating through the open hallways. Each morning, fruit drops from the branches, startling the pigeons who roost in the corners. You explore the city at a leisurely pace. There is no rush here. Time itself seems to stretch and lean on the architecture. You visit Plaza Mayor, where colonial power once announced itself in marble and bronze. Government buildings glint under the sun. Street vendors call out their wares in musical voices. A group of boys kicks a ball near the fountain, laughing in bursts that echo off the cathedral walls. The Cathedral of Lima dominates the square. Its doors are enormous, carved from wood older than most countries. Inside, cool air hugs your skin. The ceiling arches high above like a ribcage made of stone. A guide points to a sealed chamber and whispers, "Pizarro is buried there." You peer through the iron grate and see a simple coffin, worn and dark. Historians still argue whether the remains are truly his or those of someone less significant. Either way, you feel a chill. Some ghosts carry names, others only legacies. Outside, the sun feels aggressive in contrast. You buy a drink called chicha morada, made from purple corn and spiced with cloves. It's sweet, strange, and comforting. As you walk, you pass murals painted on old walls, images of saints, protests, lovers, and llamas. They all seem to speak at once. A few blocks later, a woman in a blue shawl hands you a fruit you don't recognize. She smiles, says, "Cherry moya," and waves you on. You sit on a bench and taste it. It's creamy, floral, and almost indecently delicious. You lick your fingers clean. In the afternoon, you visit the catacombs beneath the monastery of San Francisco. The descent into that silent world feels like entering a different dimension. You move past shelves of bones, skulls arranged in artistic circles, femurs stacked like old lumber. The smell is dust and time. Your guide explains that thousands were buried here in mass graves during colonial times. Historians disagree on whether this was practical or sacred, an act of reverence or simply efficient death. You breathe shallowly and avoid brushing the walls. Above ground again, everything feels too bright. You wander aimlessly until you find a quiet plaza with a small fountain and a trio of musicians playing traditional Andean tunes. The melody floats like smoke. You sit beneath the jacaranda tree and let yourself be still. A boy nearby balances a mambo on his head and grins when you applaud. For a moment, there is no past or future, only now. Your final day in Lima is spent at the ruins of Pachacamac, southeast of the city. You ride there in a creaky carriage, the wheels crunching over dry ground. The ruins rise from the desert like fossilized waves. Adobe temples melt slowly under the sun. You walk the paths barefoot, feeling the heat through your soles. A local archaeologist tells you that this was once a pilgrimage site, sacred to pre-Incan civilizations.
He speaks of solar alignments, buried idols, and ancient chants lost to time. You touch the warm stone and wonder what it remembers. As you return to Cayoyo, you feel a quiet ache in your chest. Peru has seeped into your skin. The people, the flavors, the layered history, all of it presses gently against your heart. You buy a small woven pouch at the market, embroidered with bright birds, and tuck inside it a dried cherimoya seed and a scribbled prayer. Back on the Junon, the familiar roll of the deck feels like home. The boy with the bird cage still whistles every evening, though the cage remains empty. The German botanist shows you his collection of pressed Peruvian plants. One leaf smells like lemons. Another, he claims, cures fever. He winks and says, but not heartbreak. You both laugh. The ship pulls away from the dock, and you watch the coastline of Peru slide slowly out of view. A fishing boat waves a red flag in farewell. A pelican glides low over the water. Somewhere behind you, the Andes grow smaller, vanishing into cloud and memory. You lean on the rail and write the day's final lines into your journal. The ink bleeds slightly from the sea air, the letters softening as you write. You close the cover and whisper a promise to return. Not soon, but someday.
The Pacific behind you is already becoming a memory, but its influence lingers. The salt still clings to your boots, and your hair holds the whisper of sea wind. As the Junon veers north from Lima toward the narrow waist of the Americas, something changes in the air. You notice it first at sunrise. The light feels thicker, more golden. Then comes the heat, humid and insistent, wrapping around you like a damp woolen blanket you didn't ask for. The crew rolls up sleeves, stores extra barrels of drinking water, and someone casually jokes about mosquitoes the size of hummingbirds. You do not laugh. You approach Panama long before any canal exists to divide the land. Instead of steel and locks, you see dense jungle pressed against steep hills, wide estuaries tangled with mangroves, and skies that look like they're always about to cry. You anchor at Colon, on the Atlantic side of the isthmus. The city is half finished wood, half sinking mud, with wide eyes watching you from windows and doorways. There are smells here you can't place: cinnamon, ash, rotting sugarcane, and something like vinegar. A street preacher shouts about salvation. A merchant tries to sell you a parrot. A child offers to clean your boots with water that looks like coffee. You're not staying in Colon, though. Like so many others, you're bound for Panama City, on the Pacific side. The journey across the isthmus is made not on foot or mule, but by train. The Panama Railroad, stretching just under 50 miles, is one of the greatest engineering accomplishments of its time. You board a small wooden carriage with open sides and canvas shades, your seat sticky and warm. A thin man in a wrinkled vest shouts, "All aboard." The train lurches forward like it has a grudge against the earth. You cross a land that seems constantly at war with itself. The jungle is a living wall on both sides, vines as thick as your arm, trees strangling other trees, birds shrieking warnings to no one in particular. Crocodiles bask just feet from the tracks. Orchids bloom in impossible colors. Butterflies drift lazily, unconcerned with trains or people. You pass over creaky trestle bridges above rivers the color of weak tea. Somewhere nearby, someone's smoking a cigar that smells like burned honey. You wonder if you'll ever be clean again. Your arrival in Panama City is greeted by bells and chickens. It is not the polished capital you may have imagined, but a half-sprawled town of cracked walls, moldy balconies, and laundry lines like prayer flags. The old Spanish Quarter still shows its bones: arched stone arcades, faded frescoes, and courtyards hiding fountains choked with leaves. There are churches here older than most countries, and there are people who carry that same age in their eyes. You rent a room in a boarding house run by a woman named Rosa, who speaks 5 languages and wears her grief in layers. The walls are thin, the ceiling fan squeaks, and the water comes out of the tap with the temperament of a drunk sailor. But there is always bread on the table and someone humming nearby. The night air smells like guava and wet stone. You begin to explore. Mornings are tolerable, but by afternoon, your clothes are soaked. You watch laborers haul goods through narrow alleys, their skin gleaming with sweat. You visit the crumbling forts of San Lorenzo and Portobello, where cannon still aim out at waters now silent. Your guide tells you that gold from Peru once passed through these places, guarded by soldiers with muskets in fear. Pirates like Henry Morgan sacked these coasts. Some say he was a monster. Others say he simply understood the rules better than the rest. In the market, you buy a carved wooden flute from a man with no teeth and no interest in haggling. A child paints your boots blue as a joke. You eat fried plantains, drink tamarind juice, and try not to stare at the tattooed sailor crying in a corner cafe. At night, you lie on your bed listening to rain hitting the tin roof in soft, frantic rhythms like someone tapping a secret message you're too tired to decode. On the third day, you meet a French engineer in a linen suit stained with coffee and regret. He's come to survey land for a canal, part of the early French effort to cut through the isthmus. He shows you maps smudged with dirt and sweat. He speaks of incline, rainfall, and mosquitoes as if they were rival kingdoms. He tells you over rum that this dream of uniting oceans will demand more lives than gold. Historians still argue whether it was foolish idealism or calculated arrogance that drove France to dig. Either way, the ground here has already begun to swallow the effort. You climb Ancon Hill before you leave. The wind there is thick with moisture, but the view is extraordinary. You can see the Atlantic behind you, the Pacific ahead, and the thread of jungle between them pulsing with possibility. You sip coconut water from a hollowed shell as you watch ships waiting on both sides of the land, like suitors hoping the mountain will part for them. Your final night in Panama is quiet. The priest from your ship lights a candle for the men buried beneath the tracks. A dock worker offers you a cigar and a silent nod. Rosa presses a talisman in your palm, says nothing, and turns away. You understand. Some places leave their mark not with spectacle, but with slow pressure, like vines wrapping around your chest. Back aboard the Junon, the smell of salt returns, and the wind off the open sea feels like a rebuke and the balm. You lean on the rail and look back at the place that connects oceans and separates destinies. Somewhere behind those trees, the future hums in iron and fever. But for now, you're moving forward, your boots damp, your journal full, and your heart heavy in the best possible way.
The Junon sails into the Caribbean with a renewed sense of ease, the tension of the south now replaced by warm breezes and a slower rhythm. You stand at the rail, feeling the air shift, no longer cold and biting like in the Strait of Magellan, nor heavy and stifling like Panama's jungles. Here, the breeze is something else entirely. It dances. It carries salt and spice, hints of fruit, wood smoke, and rum. This is not just a body of water. It's a world unto itself. The Caribbean wraps around you like a dream that smells of citrus and old stories. Your destination is Cuba, and the island does not sneak up on you. It announces itself with light. The coast glows golden under the tropical sun, palm trees swaying as if they've been rehearsing your arrival. Havana appears like a mosaic of color and sound, weathered colonial buildings, horse carts clattering across cobbled roads, guitar chords spilling from open balconies. The harbor is alive, filled with small boats, busy hands, laughter, and long looks. It is the sort of place where you are both welcomed and watched. As you disembark, the dock smells like fish, sweat, and perfume. A man sells peeled mangoes dusted with chili powder. Another sharpens knives on a whetstone with theatrical flair. The old cannons along the waterfront haven't fired in years, but still command respect. You make your way into town, past a boy balancing a chicken on his head. He does not ask for money. He simply nods at you like this is perfectly normal. You nod back. You're learning. You find lodging in a guest house owned by a widow who claims she once danced for the Spanish royal family. Her walls are covered with faded photographs and shelves of dusty books. There's a grand piano in the parlor, slightly out of tune, but full of charm. Your room is upstairs, the bed wrapped in mosquito netting that billows like a ghost when the fan clicks on.
Outside your window, a parrot sings snippets of military marches. Havana by daylight is a performance. You wander through streets where each corner seems to offer a new instrument, a different rhythm. Bongo drums echo through alleys, feet stomp out flamenco on rooftops, and voices rise in songs whose words you don't know, but whose meanings you feel. You drink thick coffee from tiny porcelain cups and eat fried plantains dipped in garlic sauce. It is almost too much joy to bear at once. One afternoon, you visit the Castillo del Moro, the fortress at the mouth of the harbor. The stone ramparts are hot beneath your hands. You peer through ancient gun slits, imagining British ships once bristling on the horizon. Historians still debate whether the fort's architecture was purely defensive or also symbolic, a message of Spanish permanence in the New World. Whatever its purpose, it's quiet now, save for the sound of waves breaking far below. In the City Museum, you see a painting of a slave revolt, black bodies rising against pale hands with broken chains and clenched fists. A local guide tells you stories the brochures don't, of uprisings, of sugar fields soaked in sweat, of freedom fought for, not given. You feel a strange ache. This island holds joy and sorrow in the same fist. You start to understand why every dance here seems to weep and laugh at once. One evening, you take a carriage ride to the edge of the city. The driver, an elderly man named Tomas, tells you in broken French and better Spanish about his youth spent chasing wild horses and courting girls with hibiscus in their hair. He tells you that ghosts ride in the back of his cart sometimes, but they never pay. You believe him. The ride ends near a village where locals gather for a feast under the moon. You're invited without question. You eat roast pork, sweet cassava, and a smoky dish made from plantain leaves and something you wisely do not ask about. A man plays a 3-stringed guitar with his eyes closed. A woman claps in time, laughing like a bell. Children chase fireflies with reckless joy. You sit cross-legged in the dirt, a stranger no longer. The moon rises and someone hands you a bottle of rum. You take a sip and feel the warmth ripple through your bones. You think, maybe this is what it means to belong. The next day, you visit the outskirts, places where tourists don't linger. Fields stretch beneath the sun, dotted with oxen and workers whose hats are wide and faces weathered. A man offers you a sugarcane stalk to chew. You accept, and the juice is sweet beyond description. Nearby, women hang laundry that smells of soap and wood smoke. A boy draws pictures in the dust with a stick. He shows you a sketch of a ship. You ask him if he dreams of sailing. He shrugs and says, only to escape. Your final night in Havana is slow. You return to the waterfront, where the sky is orange with sunset. A fisherman sits beside you, silent for minutes, then says, the sea is like a woman. If you respect her, she might keep you alive. If not, she'll take you quick. You nod, both amused and alarmed. The man chuckles and adds, same goes for rum. Back aboard the Shunan, the ship feels suddenly restrained, as if it too longs to linger. You sit on deck, a rolled cigar in your pocket and sand in your shoes. The music of the island still buzzes in your ears. Someone below deck hums a Cuban lullaby. You do not understand the words, but you hum along anyway. Cuba has marked you, not with grandeur, but with something older, something warm, something true. As the island fades into the dark, you realize you're not just traveling anymore. You're collecting pieces of yourself left behind in each place. The journey, like the sea, is reshaping you. You close your eyes and let the motion of the waves carry you into sleep.
Morning returns like a soft drum roll across the Caribbean, and once more you're in motion. The Junon moves north along the seam of sea and sky, bound for one final Atlantic crossing. It's been months since you first set foot aboard her, but now she feels like an extension of your body, a creaking, swaying ribcage that has housed your dreams, your journal, your quiet evenings staring at stars you've never named. As you leave the tropics behind, the wind grows cooler. The sun loses some of its swagger. Gulls trail the ship like curious spectators. A sailor offers you a peeled orange and calls you old salt with a wink. You eat it slowly, watching the ocean change color from brilliant turquoise to the deeper, darker blue of the North Atlantic. You know what's coming. The journey is almost over, but one last chapter waits. New York. In the late 1800s, the city is already a beast, a vertical and horizontal sprawl of ambition, noise, and motion. But you won't reach it quickly. First comes the crossing. It's not like your earlier voyages down the Atlantic. Here, the sea has moves. One moment it's glassy and serene, the next it turns into a stage for storms. You spend 3 days below deck with a wet towel over your forehead, wondering if it's possible to vomit your own soul. Sailors pass you water and hard biscuits without words. Misery is a language they all understand. Eventually, the waves subside. You crawl back up like a survivor, blinking into a cold wind that tastes like steel and rain. The sky is gray, the clouds low and thick. You wrap yourself in your heaviest coat and try to stand straight on the slick deck. The captain points ahead with a slow nod. There, in the mist, emerges a thin spike, then a shoulder, then a full crown. It's not a mirage. It's her, the Statue of Liberty. She isn't green yet. Her copper skin gleams like fire under the overcast sky. She's new, barely a year old. You stare up at her torch, arm raised in promise and power, and something inside you goes quiet. Around you, the deck is filled with murmurs. Some passengers weep openly, others whisper prayers. One man kisses his rosary, another salutes. For a moment, everyone aboard the Junon becomes one still body looking toward a future made of stone and hope. Historians still argue about the statue's symbolism. Was it meant more for immigrants or for France's vision of liberty? Some say it was a gift burdened with irony, given France's own turbulent politics. But no one on the ship seems to care. What they see is a beginning, or at least a chance to rewrite their endings. New York's harbor is alive. Tugboats dart between ocean liners like ants around giants. Steam whistles shriek in overlapping calls. The skyline bristles with towers and masts, smoke and stone. You dock beside ships from every corner of the globe. British freighters, German steamers, Caribbean sloops. Languages swirl through the air like wind-blown confetti. You taste Yiddish, Italian, Gaelic, Creole. It's a song with no melody but infinite rhythm. You step off the ship into a city vibrating at double the speed of Havana. Carts rush by stacked with crates of oysters, apples, newspapers. A boy tries to sell you a rat in a box. A policeman scolds a woman in 4 languages before giving up and waving her along. Somewhere in the distance, a street band plays a ragged Sousa march on brass instruments missing more than a few notes. And yet, it works. Your lodging is a boarding house near Washington Square, a narrow building wedged between 2 brick giants, its steps cracked but welcoming. The landlady, a Scottish widow with 1 eye and 6 cats, tells you bluntly not to die in the bed because it's hard to find help willing to carry out bodies. You nod politely and decide to stay only 3 nights. You spend your days exploring without a map. You walk Broadway until your boots ache. You stand in Union Square among anarchists and Methodist preachers shouting side by side. You try a hot dog from a man who swears it's made of real meat. Probably. You visit Central Park where carriages pass joggers and the air smells of pine needles and horse droppings. One morning you take the elevated train and ride just to see what's at the end of the line. The answer? More city. You spend hours in bookstores and ferry terminals and newspaper offices and beer halls. You overhear a German bartender explaining the Franco-Prussian War to an Irish cab driver with hand gestures and spilled beer. You see a street fight start over the last ticket to a minstrel show. You pass a silent parade of suffragists, their white dresses stained with street soot, holding signs like swords. One night, you attend a lecture at Cooper Union. An engineer talks about new bridges, electric elevators, even machines that might someday fly. People applaud. A boy in the back shouts, "You're lying!" But no one removes him. This is New York. Everyone shouts. Everyone stays. Before you leave, you walk the Brooklyn Bridge. Still young, still marveled at, still terrifying. The wind howls across its span. Below, the river churns with ferries, rowboats, coal barges. You pause at the midpoint, halfway between boroughs, halfway between journeys. You grip the steel cables, look at the lights flickering across the skyline, and breathe in deeply. You have made it. From the ports of Madeira to the jungles of Panama, from Patagonian fog to Havana rum, and now here on a wire bridge over a roaring river beneath a sky thick with city breath. You feel both older and newer than you began. You are a stranger, yet not strange. You are home, even if it isn't yours. Back at your boarding house, you pack your journal. You fold away a pressed orchid, a Cuban coin, and a matchbox from a bar that no longer exists. You leave a few coins on the dresser, pet the grumpiest of the cats goodbye, and walk out into the early morning light, boots clicking on wet stone.
Your boots strike the pavement with a rhythm that feels final. New York, for all its glitter and grime, disappears behind you as the train pulls out of the station. You're bound for the coast once more, for one last port, one last goodbye to the sea. But it isn't a voyage you're beginning. It's a landing, the kind you can't quite explain with longitude or steam power. You sit by the window, watching forests blur past, trees blur into fields, fields blur into smokestacks. The world looks smaller now, or maybe you're just larger. You think of the Junon, not the ship, really, but the ghost she leaves inside you, the roll of her deck beneath your feet, the creak of ropes in the wind, the salt that never quite leaves your tongue. You close your eyes, and for a moment you feel yourself back on her deck, the horizon wide and waiting. But the train jerks, and reality reasserts itself with a whistle. You're no longer a passenger on a French frigate. You're a man, with dust on his coat and stories stitched into his soul. Stories you'll struggle to tell without sounding mad or enchanted. You arrive in a small harbor town. Its name barely matters. It's the kind of place where fishing boats nod gently in the current, where the gulls scream as if rehearsing old grievances, and where the docks smell like rope and memory. You rent a room above a bait shop. The mattress is thin, but the view makes up for it. Out your window, the Atlantic stretches out like an unfinished sentence. Each morning, you walk the beach, boots in hand, letting the foam nip at your toes. Children play in tide pools, unaware of the vastness that lies just beyond the waves. Old men mend nets and swap lies. You nod at them, and they nod back. No one asks where you've been. You suspect they already know. Your journal feels slower now. Not because you have less to say, but because you savor the silence between words. You write about the Brazilian market with the parrot perched on a butcher's hat, about the mule in Santiago who nearly ended your trip, about the taste of rum beneath a mango tree in Havana. You don't explain these moments. You simply record them like footprints in soft sand. Some days you sit by the harbor and watch ships come and go. Steamers, schooners, even a few ironclads. You wonder who they carry. Explorers? Fugitives? Lovers. You wave at each one, just in case. One rainy afternoon, you visit the town library. It's quiet, musty, perfect. In the back corner, you find a book about global trade routes. There's a map inside, simplified, clean and cold. It shows nothing of the storms, the seasickness, the laughter, or the fireflies. You laugh quietly to yourself and close the book. Some things can't be charted. Historians still argue about the legacy of voyages like yours. Were they colonial ventures in disguise, escapist follies, engines of progress, all of the above? You don't pretend to know, but you do know that your heart expanded in places maps forget to mark. You learned that the world is not a globe, but a tangle of voices, smells, textures, and stories, and you touched many of them. One evening, you walk the beach under a swollen moon. You find a piece of driftwood shaped like a ship's hull. You carry it back to your room and place it on the windowsill. It catches the morning light just right. You smile. You named it Junon, of course. People in town begin to recognize you. The baker saves you the heel of the bread. A boy brings you fresh mussels from the tide pool. An old woman places a white flower on your doorstep. No notes, no explanation, just kindness, quiet and warm. One day you stop writing altogether. You realize the story no longer belongs in ink. It's in your gait now, in your voice when you tell jokes in Spanish without realizing it, in the way you nod politely but firmly at authority figures, the way you always face into the wind. You've seen too much to be unchanged, but not enough to stop being curious. That's the secret, isn't it? Not knowing what's next, but going anyway. You never board another frigate, but sometimes in the hush before sleep, you feel the Junon rising beneath you again. You smell Madeira wine, feel Patagonian fog on your face, hear the bells of Panama City echoing through jungle heat. And in those moments, you're not in a room above a bait shop. You're on deck, boots firm, eyes wide, wind in your ears, stars above, and the world ahead.
Let your body soften now. Let the salt and wind and steam slip away. You've come a long way tonight. Across oceans, through jungles, over deserts. You've worn boots crusted with dust and shoes soaked with sea. You've watched strangers become stories. You've seen cities rise like thunderclouds and vanish like mist. Take a breath, and then another. Let your chest lift like a sail in gentle wind. You are safe. You are still. The storm has passed. The waves no longer crash. They whisper. The ship no longer sways. It rocks you. Gently, like a cradle woven of memory and sleep. That old wooden deck beneath your feet is now a soft bed. Those distant gulls have gone quiet. Only the hush of the tide remains, rolling in, rolling out, like the slow rhythm of dreams. You've touched the past, not as a ghost, but as a traveler. You've smelled cannon smoke and mango blossoms, tasted fear and joy, drifted through ports that still echo with laughter and song. You've carried fire in your pocket and silence in your heart. So rest now. The journey is complete. Let the world fade into the background. Let your eyelids grow heavy. Let your breath slow to match the sea. You are home. You are home. You are home.